Griff, to start with then, what's the plans in terms of getting your international players straight back into the fray? Any of them being rested, or are they all straight back in?
They're involved with everything we're doing. Obviously they had a down day yesterday, but we're part of the preparations in terms of the information going in regarding Zebra, and they're across everything, and they've come back obviously in a good space, full of enthusiasm and vigour, as you always expect with them. And to be fair, they always transition pretty quickly into Osprey mode, and are looking at what comes next and our ambitions in terms of the league and how they can contribute. So that always gives you a buzz in terms of how we're preparing for things, but they will all be involved in some way, shape or form.
Is it difficult for someone like Alan Wynne-Jones, who obviously wants to play his maximum part for the region but has had really a very tough workload at international level?
He has, and again, he's just been magnificent in terms of what he's done and what he puts his body through. We've also got to try and look at the calendar and how we've got to try and help Al in terms of managing his body. Come off the autumn, come into a real long and heavy block with us. We did rest him in the back end of Europe for obvious reasons, going into the Six Nations. But look at what he's done again recently. We've got a duty to him to try and help him around managing his time, not just in games but in training and looking at what he does in any given week. He obviously wants to contribute as much as he can, but I think there's a degree of sense in terms of how we can use him as well.
Dan Biggar, on the shortlist for player of the tournament?
Yeah, really chuffed and proud of all the Osprey efforts. Really, it's been a unbelievable effort in terms of what they've done after the first fixture. So many good individual moments around all the Ospreys, but I always enjoy seeing Rees and Dan play together, play off each other pretty well, and start to impart their game on the Welsh way.
A few more dual contracts announced during that period. How much is that going to impact on the Ospreys, on the number of games that international players actually play, or have they already been rested effectively, so it won't make much difference in terms of totals?
I mean, we see it as really positive, in terms of it's a big part of the Rugby Services Agreement in terms of what it's going to mean for the players and the welfare of players, and how we can sort of help and guide their career over peaks such as the World Cup, but also the long term as well, and our ambitions as well. So I think it is all about working together. There's caveats with each player in terms of what they can and can't do, and thankfully I think we're starting to develop a real strong relationship with Gats. Him and Steve are speaking regularly, even throughout the Six Nations, when they've obviously both, especially Warren, got some heavy commitments there, and it was great to see players come back for the fixtures we had. Glasgow in particular, people like Tipperick, King and Baldwin involved in that, and Jarvis, shows how proactive some of these discussions are, and they've had a long discussion on Sunday about what we plan to do around the players and his input to that.
Is there going to be any latitude, for example, for backs to play more regional games than forwards?
It's all based around some of the individual needs of those players. Nothing is set in stone as such. And I think there's a degree of flexibility to my knowledge around it, around what people can and can't do. But again, it's just around just some positive communication, and a realisation that we all want to win games and have our own ambitions. But I think we know the players at the heart of it.
You're already planning for next season with the announcement of a contract for Joe Bierman. A few words about him.
Yeah, he's a good old stalwart Joe, in a sort of period where we've lost a lot of experience, and we know we're one of the youngest sides in Europe, where the budget has been stretched. He's been a bit of a talisman on and off the field. His contribution can't be underestimated, to be fair to him, and we felt his service was worthy of more contribution to the group, especially around a World Cup year, and some of the support he gives some of our younger players is fantastic. But make no bones about it, he still holds his end up as a real physical force, which opposition sides don't like playing against. So in terms of the 12 months we've got, he can still be a huge figure on the field.
With possibly 5 back rowers away at the World Cup, you might even be looking for further experienced reinforcements there.
We are always looking for reinforcements around the squad, but I know where you're going with things, and I'm not going to make any further comment until anything significant would happen on that front.
What are the abilities of Gareth Delve as a player?
He's a good player, he's a good leader. I've tracked his career for a while as a Cardiff boy who came through the system, and as someone we do hugely admire, but we've got nothing more to add than that.
What about this weekend's game then? Good time to be playing them?
I think so. We're due a game of rugby. It is a strange calendar when you tend to go 27, 28 weeks in a row flat out with a fixture right at the end of the week every week, and then suddenly you go 2 weekends without one. It means this week, Monday, Tuesday, we're desperately itching to play, especially boys coming back in the mix, but also a group which went pretty well against Munster. So it's just trying to get the balance right, whilst giving full respect to a Zebra side which has constantly given us problems, home and away. We've had some struggles against them, so we've got to get our own house in order, and we obviously need all 23 players chosen to be across all levels of detail to get anything out of this game.
But psychologically, some of your players were involved last weekend in Rome, some of theirs were as well. You might have a little fillip from that.
Yeah, we do, and they've come back in and contributed straight away around some of the rugby facets, which they sort of see the game as, but also understanding what we want to do as well. And I think it is about being ruthless and efficient from the minute go. Our last 3 fixtures against them, we've given them early points and made it a pretty long day at the office for ourselves. You have to keep re-evaluating 40, 60 minutes, and you've got to almost just go to the nth degree to put them away. And you've got to be prepared to do that, but also I think if we can get on top early, well, hopefully we can be really positive in our rugby as well. And I think that's what it's about. Hopefully people can see the sort of spirit around Welsh rugby at the moment, and hopefully show a bit of interest in regional rugby now as well. Our supporters are magnificent coming out, and hopefully we can start to show something for them Saturday night.
Well, all the regions have got something left to play for, whether it be top 4, top 6 or in Europe. So how do you rate your chances of making that top 4?
Yeah, it's an exciting time, as you said, for all teams, but for us in particular, we obviously started the season well, but we didn't get too excited. We knew where the group was at, and we knew there'd be a couple of down days, especially when we've had some fallow periods around the autumn, and a couple of other fixtures have gone against us. But we're in contention, and we're hugely excited by the fact we've got a youthful group full of enthusiasm, with leadership simmering away as well, that want to win a league. And as I said, we'll fall down on a couple of technical, tactical reasons at times, but for effort and attitude, hopefully this group will keep pushing to the last moment.
Just to revisit that dual contract situation, you will know that some Ospreys fans will probably be concerned with the idea that Dan Allen can only play 16 games possibly next season. What would you say to them on that score, in terms of how you see it being managed?
We'll look after those individuals for their own welfare, but rest assured we have our own ambitions, and whilst we would never flog players, it is about us winning games on a regular basis. Those players in particular were at the heart of our winning run at the start of the year. Possibly if they don't play 2 or 3 of them, you're weakening the side, and we've got to obviously manage a calendar to consistently win and build greater depth in the squad, which hopefully some of these agreements can enable us to do. But it is about us pushing forward in all the tournaments we play, and Dan and Alan Wynne want to be at the forefront of that as well. We've got to trust other people in terms of the squad themselves, but as I said, we're really happy with the discussions we're having at the moment, that these players can play the games that they feel their bodies can manage as well.
Who has the final say? Is it you? Is it Warren? Is it the players?
It's Warren, and by and large, but as I said, the discussions are really positive with Steve and Warren, and the player is amongst those discussions as well. Dan is probably in a unique position at the moment, in that he's now going into a calendar where he's playing games internationally in the autumn and in the Six Nations. He's never had that before, so even though his total games for us has always been pretty high, it's because he's never had a full 12 months of international commitments. His world is changing a little bit now, and we've got to respect and manage that as well, and try and support him through that.
If you're playing Toulon, Leicester, Toulouse in the European Cup, Warren Gatland rings you up and says, Alan Wynn's a bit tired this week, he needs a rest. You have to rest him.
I will clarify that certain fixtures are ring-fenced in the contracts, that they will not be stopped playing if they fit.
Is that?
Certain fixtures are ring-fenced.
So when you say Warren Gatland has the final say, he doesn't.
Apart from that clause in that contract, I guess, subplot 2.11.
You're saying 2 entirely different things.
There are caveats and clauses in there which mean that we're comfortable with where we are in terms of access to players. If there's disagreement, or a captain has a tendency, we don't foresee too much growing disagreements because of the conversations that are ongoing. It's 2 discussion points.
So back to the question, then. If he says, I don't want him to play this week,
He wouldn't play
he wouldn't play.
at this point in the season, and we would respect that because of what they've come on the back of. That's common sense. I think the international
But if
continues.
it's one of these games that Peter mentions, his ring-fenced matches, what happens then if he still says, he's tired, I don't want him to play?
I think that may be a different agenda for PRW and a meeting that's over above me, I'm afraid.
So that hasn't been thrashed out.
In the word of the contract, we can play him. Whether that's the right thing to do for the long-term welfare of the player is another question.
The balance of the season, those games are at a time when they're not off the back of it. You know, it's not going to be a problem, is it?
In those windows, you'd
Those
hope not.
games are going to be priorities for everyone, aren't they? He's
Yeah.
going to want them to play in them, I'm sure.
Yeah,
That's-
example, the last game of Europe versus
That's not
Treviso
a-
away, we pulled
Sorry
all
to
our
interrupt,
internationals.
That's not a realistic conflict. That's not ever going to happen.
Why not?
More because those games aren't at a time of the season that everyone isn't going to want them prioritised.
And my working relationship with the Welsh coaches in the past has been they want those players playing those games because of the measurements that go with those games.
More interestingly is that Alan Wynne, there was a lot of attention on the number of games he was playing over between November and the Six Nations. That's more of an issue than the Heineken or European Championship games. So you were doing it because you had a massive injury crisis in that position. How would that sort of scenario play out? Because if you don't have any other players,
That was perhaps a bit of empathy, and those discussions happened anyway, regardless of a dual contract at that given time, about where Stephen Warren spoke on a weekly basis that unfortunately we had to push him through. But again, around the back end of Europe, he didn't train the Northampton week, he didn't play or figure at all in the Treviso game, because obviously we were out, and we were trying to manage and be sensible around that. Hopefully, this agreement will also now enable us to build more depth in our squad. We had 2 South African both injured at the time as well, but so that's a different example, but it also help support people like Rory Thornton coming through the system.
Gruff, are these guys likely to be playing this weekend?
All be involved.
Six Nations guys? Yeah. How difficult will that be for them?
Don't foresee an issue with these guys. The characters, as I said, they come back into Osprey mode, they ask the right questions, and they've got the right level of information about what they've come on the back of and what they're going to add to as well. They've come in and saying, Zebra do this, Zebra do that. We've seen this, talk about Six Nations experience. So-and-so does this. Have you considered this? So it's a unique mix that's taking place in the group, but they also recognise they've all watched the Munster game and they know our themes that we've gone around the group there and what we want to progress from the Munster game. So give them some credit, but also I have no qualms about their involvement.
Do they sort of desperately want to play this weekend?
Yeah, by there to a man, they all want to be involved. They may have a slight little bit of physical fatigue, but mentally they're really sharp.
But if Will Greenwood said last week that he was picking a World 15 and would be in it and he'd be his captain, he then goes and gets a man of the match against Italy. We talked about the workload that he has. Does he, despite how long you've worked with him, does he still amaze you at what he achieves over there?
Yeah, he is phenomenal as a man. He comes in and straight away Monday morning, he wants to know the play sheet. He wants to know his role in terms of what it means for him. There's a couple of tweaks there. What does that mean for me as a lifter? What does it mean for the jumper? Puts you on your toes as a coach because you've got to be across everything and knowing every implication across 3-4 phases of rugby. But you need that, and that also drives others around him. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, really, because obviously the back end of that is high performance week in, week out. And I think we're obviously blessed to see him around this generation of Welsh rugby, and for me, him and O'Connell are just phenomenal sort of guys to watch over the last 10 years.
One final question, if it's about this weekend's game, and we'll move on to the players for the train afterwards.
Gruff, do you see any other Ospreys breaking into Warren's World Cup plans?
I think they may have a fair crack at it. Hopefully we can have a good run around our ambitions for the playoffs, which again puts people at the forefront of the mind. Extended squad in the summer, you'd hope and maybe even expect to see people like Dan Baker, Nicky Smith. I think someone like James King is obviously really highly in the mix, and he'll be hugely motivated to have a good end of the season to perhaps consolidate his position. But also outside of that, I hope our wingers can start to show some consistent form. We've seen some real positive signs recently. People like Dan Evans and such. I hope they can use our games and hopefully our form to lever their chances upwards.